Hey, everybody. Welcome to my guest tonight. I'm your host, Jeff Revilla. I've got an amazing guest joining me tonight, Mari Reisberg, therapist, podcaster, circus performer.
From the trapeze to the therapist chair, she's danced through life with creative flair, lifting spirits with movement in mind. Mari Reisberg helps joy unwind. Tune in now, take a creative flight. It's my guest tonight with Jeff Revilla. What a sight! Stories that soar and laughter that heals. This is the podcast where life gets real.
Mari, welcome to the show. Did you like your song?
Oh my gosh, Jeff, that was amazing. I want that to play whenever I enter a room or whenever I have to show up somewhere. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for putting that
holiday
together.
Parties, the grocery store. It's a Mari Reisberg.
Exactly. It's going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the night for sure.
Well, I teased that break going into your song with circus performer and quite a longevity, 17 years in the circus. How did you get into that lifestyle? Sometimes it's family related, it's passed down, but how did you start into the circus and into studying trapeze?
Yeah. So I was a rowdy 3-year-old. No one else in my family is in the circus or just trapeze, but I was a very rowdy 3-year-old, and my mom, who was pregnant with my younger brother at the time, wanted me out of the house. And we happened to live down the street from the trapeze school in Portland, Oregon. And I started taking trapeze lessons. And then at 3, I was invited to be a part of their adult performing troupe. In one of their shows needed a redheaded kid. And so every night my dad would walk me to the theater. I would do my performance and then I'd walk back home with him. But that's how I got my start in the circus, physical theater, performing world, and trapeze was a huge part of that. And so that's where it all began.
You were like a rowdy, you had a lot of energy as a 3-year-old, and you went to study this, and did you get hooked right away? Was it something that you loved doing right from the start?
Absolutely. I think the sensation of flying was so magical and incredible that I remember having dreams of flying, and then being on a trapeze, you literally feel like you're flying, even though you're holding on to a bar and moving through the air. But you could never get high enough on a swing on the playground, but on a trapeze, now that was a whole different experience, feeling like you were really flying. And I think from the very beginning, I was hooked.
And I live in the East Coast, and I never even heard of a school for trapeze artists. My daughter did gymnastics and dance, and I understand that world. But what does gymnastics look like for a 3-year-old? I can't imagine they put you 20 feet up in the air on day one.
Definitely not. Definitely not. We were learning the basics of trapeze. Your feet could touch the ground, and you were holding onto the bar and running one direction and then turning your body and running back the other way. And the bar was, fit a 3-year-old's hands. It wasn't a big dowel that you couldn't hold on to. And the triangle that was the bar, and then the padding connected to the ceiling, was the size for a child to use, because as a 3-year-old, your legs aren't wide enough to grip the edges of a full-size trapeze. So there were modifications that were made as children. And that was, there was just something so magical about being a part of the circus world and experiencing what aerial dance was and physical theater, and learning all the components and pieces of this world of performance, of how to use your body to convey story, because it wasn't through lyrics or dialogue.
And as you go through the years, 17 years of studying, Are there like in dance and gymnastics, there's recitals and competitions. What does that look like? Do you go through a year of study and then you put on a performance, or is that something you do on summer break? You go out and perform at different fairs and community places.
So when you're taking classes like you would with a dance class, yes, you have a recital at the end of the class session. But by the time I was 6, I was a member of their children's performing troupe. And so that was a part of, we did regular shows. We had, I want to say, memory serves, we had a summer show and a winter show that we did. And then sometimes we would tour and go to other little towns or fairs in Oregon and put on the show that we had created for audiences. But there weren't any competitions. There weren't levels other than like the children's performing troupe and the adult performing troupe. And you kind of moved up into the adult performing troupe. And that happened as I hit high school and got to participate in so many amazing opportunities. After I graduated high school, I took a year off between high school and college and toured with the adult performing company in Washington State, Oregon, and then we got the opportunity to perform off-Broadway in New York City for a month, and that was an incredible experience, being in the theater that size, performing 8 times a week, and navigating what trapeze and physical theater do to your body that many times a week as well.
Did you have a favorite maneuver or like a signature one that you love to perform during shows?
Oh, I think my favorite was literally just to swing and feel the air blowing past you, whether you were hanging on the bar or sitting on top of the bar or hanging by your knees on the bar or your ankles on the bar, and just feeling the freedom and, again, feeling like you were flying.
And those years performing, is that where you caught this bug of performing, of getting in front of a crowd, of just showcasing some sort of talent or some sort of emotion? Did that all come from starting here in the trapeze school?
Absolutely. From that first time I got to perform in front of an audience, I was absolutely hooked. If you ask my parents, I put on many a show for them in my living room. And then it just kept growing and continuing on. And getting to share a piece of your heart and soul with an audience is unlike anything else. It's such a wonderful experience to be able to walk onto a stage and share a part of yourself and impact other people by the story you're telling, and then be able to finish that performance and walk off stage and feel like you were able to impact someone and share a little piece of you with someone else that you may never meet, you may never know, and then head back to the rest of your life.
You mentioned traveling, and you went to New York City. Did you stay there for a while, or did you end up moving to New York City for a little bit?
Yeah, so the first time we were there for a month performing off-Broadway, and then after that, I went to college in Connecticut and got a degree in acting, and then following my acting degree, I moved back to New York and lived there for about 3 years. And at that point, I was singing with an Irish band, on auditioning, and working as a nanny. As you do in New York, you got a lot of things to help you survive.
And most important, you were started out as performing, you go to school for acting, and then you end up in New York City, auditioning, getting roles, and trying to, establish yourself. But there's a little thing you just skipped over real quickly. You started singing in an Irish band.
Yes.
How did that happen? How did you connect with that group?
Yeah. So growing up, my cousin is 10, 12 years older. Maybe she's a little bit older than that. She plays the Irish fiddle and had lived in New York for years and years and years. And she was always looking for a singer. And I happened to move to New York, and she knew that I sang and knew that I was a performer, and asked if I wanted to come and sing a couple of songs at one of her gigs. And I did, and things worked out really well. And so I just started getting to perform with her band and singing at the Coney Island Irish Festival and for a lot of weddings, which is a curious thing. I will say there aren't a lot of Irish like uplifting songs for weddings. There's a lot of traditional Irish songs about famine and like the burden and surviving, and drinking, and a lot of drinking songs.
Because some of those Irish pubs can get pretty rowdy, after midnight. Yeah.
This is very, very true. And so much fun and so welcoming. And everyone knows the songs and everyone knows the lyrics. So it's such a community that you get to be a part of. And that was such a gift, being a young performer in New York, to really get to be a part of this experience.
Because as performing, if you know the material and you can deliver it fairly well, that whole bar, if you're at a club or a pub, they're in the palm of your hands. They're singing along and pounding their bottles, and it's a great time. And if you have that talent and that training, and you're singing these songs that people love, what better gig is there in the world?
None. Absolutely none. Yeah, you captured it so beautifully. Yes, to be able to have everyone join in and participate and get to lead them and play. And that's some of my favorite types of creative experiences.
So this love for performing, this passion, for the arts and just expressing yourself in different ways through, physical, flying through the air physically and singing and dancing and acting. But that's not where you stopped with your education, with learning. What else caught your eye during that time that you like, I got to learn a little bit. I need to learn more stuff.
Right. I'm taking a different step. Yeah. So when I was living in New York City, I hear this a lot. People tell me, you're just so easy to talk to. You have a very welcoming face, and you listen to me. And so wherever I went in New York, it was, if I went to a bar, if I was in a cab, if I got my nails done, someone was telling me their life story. I have been at diners at 2 a.m. and had people walk up to my table and say, hey, can I join you? I just really need to talk to someone. And after a couple of years of this happening, I thought, I should get paid for this, or there's something here that I should pay attention to. And it was at this time where I was starting to think about what creativity was to me. I think up to this point, creativity had been performing and had been being on stage in this kind of big C creativity. And I started kind of toying with this idea that life could be creative, that you could get dressed with creativity or walk your dog in a creative fashion or explore life through this creative lens. And after a conversation with my dad, he encouraged me to look into creative arts therapies. And that was where I found specifically dance movement therapy, because dance and movement had always been such a huge transformational experience for me that I was really intrigued by, well, how does this turn into therapy, and how do you get to participate in transformation and supporting other people to experience transformation in their own life. And so I got into a program. At the time, there were only 5 dance movement therapy programs in the United States. And the one I ended up at was at a tiny Buddhist-inspired university in Boulder, Colorado, called Naropa University. And that was where I learned, the world of psychology and somatic psychology, or body-based psychology and dance movement therapy. And through that process, my acting degree started to make a little more sense to me, and I started putting pieces together and was then able to combine the world of performance and the world of psychology. And that then around 2013 turned into my sustaining creativity work that I started doing with universities across the country and supporting performers at the time, specifically performers, to have more agency and experience of safety and trust within themselves to take creative risk from, and then come back to their sense of self post performance.
And that's why I think your backstory is so important. You went on this journey of
Yeah.
performing, being a performer, and helping people and just listening to people. And then you start studying psychology and dance and creative
Yeah.
movement. And all those things happen because of all the things that happen. That's kind of like I love like drawing a line through history and seeing
Yeah.
every time those dots connect along that line. And you have a great story that does all of that. And you start talking about creative therapy, movement therapy, and for
Mhm.
actors specifically or performers specifically.
Mhm.
And what would be a reason that they start to look into this type of therapy, or who specifically would benefit from that type of therapy?
I mean, I hate to be cliche and say everyone, but it's true. Everyone would benefit. I think not everyone has a connection with their body for any number of reasons. And the world of somatic psychology, we have learned and have studies where we know our body holds information for us, and being able to access that, have awareness of the cues and signals our body is giving us when we're experiencing panic, or when we're experiencing depression or anxiety or worry or fear or grief or loss. When we pay attention to our body, it's giving us signals to alert us things are happening or things are about to happen, which then helps us navigate those parts of our life more effectively. And for some people, talk therapy is the world that fits into, and that's great. And for other people, they need to access it more non-verbally, and that's where movement therapy and dance therapy come in to play.
And like I asked earlier about, did you have a signature move or a way that you presented tricks? You've taken your skill sets and applied it to sustain and creativity. And you said that you've now taken this and taken it to colleges and
Mhm.
you've taught at different universities, this type of therapy. Tell us a little bit about, how did you put a curriculum together to take on the road or to take to different colleges?
Yeah, so I combined my degrees very directly, this degree in acting and this degree in psychology. And really, the foundation of my sustaining creativity work is all about safety and trust. When we feel safe enough, we're never going to have 100% safety in anything we do. So it's about finding, how do I know I feel safe with myself? How do I know I feel safe with other people? How do I know I feel safe in the environment I'm in? What does that feel like in my body? And then how do I trust myself? How do I trust others? How do I trust the environment? And what does that look like? How do I feel that in my body? And so it's this foundation of safety and trust where we can take creative risk from, whether it's in a class or a performance or, trying something new. And then we have this foundation to come back to once the creative risk has resolved, or we've finished the class or the monologue or the performance. This idea that I have more control and more agency of myself. I really have to know myself to take risk. And creativity comes alive at the edge of your comfort zone. And so finding the edge of your comfort zone is really important. And so creating a curriculum that really supports students and faculty to explore these things for themselves, find what works, what doesn't work, how they relate to each other, how they relate to themselves, was really important to me, because I felt that on some level, I got this amazing training on how to be an actor in acting school, but I didn't always get how to support my creativity as an actor, or how to navigate between the worlds of performing and life. And so that's this skill set and this curriculum that I've created to support people with.
Is this something that works better one-on-one or in groups, or how about even virtually? Can you tell us a little bit more about the ways that people can participate in this?
All of the above.
Yes.
I've done in-person workshops for various groups of people and universities. I've done virtual workshops for universities. I've done one-on-one coaching sessions. And it just depends on what people are looking for and how much time they have and what they're hoping they will, be able to flourish or transform for themselves. And for everyone, that's different. Some people really enjoy a group setting and that feels the safest. Other people feel like I can't do anything too risky in front of other people. I have to do it first for myself, and then I can do it in a group. So, yeah.
You talked about the pressures of acting, and maybe even the auditioning and the stress and the rejection, and those things tend to compound over years. Have you applied this outside of the acting world for, maybe people with high stress jobs, moms and dads, or, what are other applications for this type of therapy for other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, these worlds are a little separate. The sustaining creativity world, and then my true private practice as a therapist world. The creativity world, I use a lot of the creative pieces with my therapy clients and with my coaching clients that are specifically more of the creative, lend themselves more to creativity. But I work with a lot of people who consider themselves to be former creatives. So maybe they have a degree in music or dance or acting, but then set that aside and joined the corporate world, or set that aside and had kids. And so a lot of the work we do is about rediscovering their creative spark, or creating time for them to flex their creative muscles more than they had been, or rediscovering why they set creativity aside, and how does creativity get to blend more into their everyday life and not just be only about performing, but it's about opening the refrigerator, seeing what you have, and making a meal, or cutting toast in a certain way for kids who don't like crust, or, putting a collection of things together on a wall because it brings you joy, or ordering food from a restaurant and putting it on a plate in a way that is appealing to you. Those are all creative expressions, but I just don't think we think of creativity in those ways. Or if you can't come back to performing creativity, how are you using creative opportunities in your corporate job? Do you color code your spreadsheets? That's a form of creativity. Do you doodle while someone is talking? That's a form of creativity and creative expression. So really supporting people to find these pockets and these moments of creative spark that they can bring into more of their life experience.
For someone who maybe never considered this type of therapy, or expressing themselves, or getting back in touch with some of their creative aspects that they had as when they were younger, because life sometimes catches up with you.
Yeah.
Are there any common threads that you see that when people come to your practice, or people seek you out, that this is, I may not be thinking about this, but typically people who come to see you tend to have or collect in this little pool, where they seem to have the same thing where they're not getting that spark in life? Or is there
Mm.
something common between the people who come to see you? The
Um,
only reason I'm asking is if somebody listening
yeah,
wasn't thinking about this, but like, wait a second, I kind of feel burned out, or
yeah,
what's my trigger?
sure. I mean, I don't know that there's one thing. There are many things that cross over for people. Burnout is a huge one. Regret is also something people, I wish I'd continued with piano lessons, or I wish I'd taken that dance class. But also, I think this, there's a self sabotage of not feeling good enough, that I wasn't good enough to do whatever creative expression professionally. And I think we discount the amateur, and it's okay to not do something professionally and still enjoy it and love it. And so I think reminding ourselves that it's okay to do something for fun and because it brings us joy and it isn't for anyone else. But oftentimes fear gets in our way because we think, oh, I have to be perfect at it, or I have to do it in this certain way because that's how other people are doing it. And I like to encourage people that no, you get to do it in your way. Mari's way is different than Jeff's way of doing something. And what works for me isn't going to work for other people. But I like to give people lots of options and lots of tools and skills so they can start pulling things out of their own toolkit to really enhance and support their own life, but also to understand we have emotions for a reason. So let's understand why. Why we have fear. What is fear doing for us? And how do we navigate the moments where we feel afraid and we still try something? Comes back to feeling safe enough to take a risk. If we don't feel safe enough, we're not going to try anything.
And your creativity keeps evolving. You have a podcast, Sustaining Creativity. Tell us a little bit about, what was the genesis of that show, and what are some of the stories or interviews you're telling on that show?
Yeah. So my podcast started, like so many people, during the pandemic. And when I couldn't travel to universities and do in-person workshops, but I really felt it was a time where we needed to keep talking about creativity and needed to share our creative self and creative experience with the world. And so I pivoted to start the Sustaining Creativity podcast, and I interview people from around the world on what creativity means to them, how it shows up in their life. And I have interviewed some amazing individuals, people who come from very creative worlds and people who do not come from your traditional creative world. I have interviewed excuse me, I've interviewed lawyers and, athletes and accountants and computer programmers in alongside the actors, dancers, filmmakers, all of these, the storytellers and writers and photographers. So this is now, I'm in my 6th year and we're almost at 300 episodes. And it's been such an incredible journey to share these stories with my listeners and to keep the conversation of creativity alive.
Did any profession ever surprise you? Like, you interviewed an accountant who he also happens to juggle chainsaws. Like, I didn't see that coming. You ever have any good surprises on the show?
Always good surprises. I think one of the ones that sticks out in my head was I asked my guest what their earliest memory of being creative was, and they shared that when they were little, they were a really good liar. And that was their creative ability of weaving lies and stories. And so I wasn't expecting to hear that from someone. But yes, I've interviewed accountants who feel their ability to visualize numbers and see a spreadsheet and color code it and make it come alive off the page is, I wasn't expecting someone to dig that deep but that was their experience. I've interviewed professional doodlers, which is an amazing job I didn't know existed, where they've doodled, for Steve Jobs, who's giving a speech, and they're behind doodling what he's talking about. And that was the things and the careers that are out there that I've never heard of. I love talking to people and learning. I always learn something from my guests, and that's part of the joy of getting to interview people from all walks of life and all corners of the globe.
And if people want to check out those almost 300 episodes, what's the best way to find the podcast?
You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so many more.
All the places.
All the platforms you can find Sustaining Creativity Podcast. And you could go all the way back to 2020 and start from the beginning and see how I've grown as a host and listen to all of the guests and their amazing stories. And yeah, we're releasing our 300th episode, I want to say sometime in July.
And if people, colleges, corporations want to hire or get in contact with Mari Reisberg, how do they get in contact with you?
Well, I am very active on social media, so you can find me at Sustaining Creativity on Instagram, Facebook, under Mari Reisberg on LinkedIn, or TikTok is Sustaining Creativity. You can send me an email. My email is under my full name, which is Marika, Marika, Reisberg, Reisberg @gmail.com. That is the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Mari, this has been so much fun. I'm going to get off of this call and go be creative now, just for my own sanity. I've been stuck in a recliner for 8 weeks with a torn Achilles, but now I feel inspired again, and I'm going to start being creative again.
I love to hear it. Thank you, Jeff, so much for inviting me to join you tonight. It has been such a treat.
Let's hear that theme song.
From the trapeze to the therapist chair, she's danced through life with creative flair. Lifting spirits with movement in mind, Mari Reisberg helps joy unwind. Tune in now, take a creative flight. It's my guest tonight with Jeff Revilla, what a sight. Stories that soar and laughter that heals. This is the podcast where life gets real.
I feel like you're going to start carrying like a little portable boombox, so when you walk in the room, hit play.
Yes. Are you in my head? Is exactly what I will be doing.